So I'll bring some people up if you're a new listener to the channel. The data centers is what we're talking about. Is we actually found a way. There's a company that is kind of decentralizing it, meaning that more people can get involved. We're kind of labeling it as fractionalized ownership of data centers because data centers are some of the fastest growing things on the planet right now. Most of the big commercial real estate investors are now converting their properties into holding and building, allowing building of data centers on them because the demand, exponential growth of AI, everything's just growing in quantum leaps is insane. Most of us, though, Catherine, you're probably the same boat. We don't have billions of dollars to buy full size data centers. But what these guys have figured out how to do is collectively, we can go in and we actually have the ability to earn or purchase units within those kind of stacks. Like if you saw
Right.
a tower of those data centers, I was explaining this to somebody this morning. It's kind of like they call them nodes officially, but it'd be like a bunch of PS3s stacked on top of each other
Right.
if you want to
Right.
picture it that way. Nintendo game. However, what we're seeing though is what happens is as companies push their data out there, they need storage, they need cloud storage, and they pay us rent. So the reason Catherine said I got a handful of units and I'm going to get more is because they're going to pay her rent, meaning in royalties or whatever the label you want to call it, every single month as data is being stored on her unit. Now, you've heard of passive incomes, Catherine. When have you ever heard of something as good as this type of passive income?
Honestly, I haven't heard anything as good. I look at it as it's either a one-time investment or you can, buy in fractional ownership and make payments on your server. But we're going to be paid for, the minimum 3 to 5 years. So what if you created an investment that you got residual income every month on a certain day and you got paid on this? And we're talking, let's just say on a low end, $1,000. What would that do for somebody's life to just automatically on, let's say, the 10th of the month, you get $1,000? Just kind of like what we used to call mailbox money. What would that do for your life? I know that $500 can change somebody's life a month. And with inflation, we need that extra income to come in, just to buy groceries. I mean, I went to the grocery store the other day. It was ridiculous the little amount of groceries that I bought, and I spent $300. So, this is, I believe, going to change the everyday person's life if they choose to jump in.
100%. Couldn't agree more. And I know you've probably read Robert Kiyosaki's books,
Hmm.
right? The Rich Dad Poor Dad and stuff. Rich Dad Poor Dad was based on the mindset of what the rich do, what the poor do. And then the second book, which I just mentioned a little bit ago, was the cash flow quadrant. But what really stuck out to me is I remember studying this years and years ago when I first started my entrepreneurial journey, probably 30 years ago, that he was talking about having assets, which I didn't really understand because I was never taught that. It wasn't something that happened in school. And he was talking about instead of going out and spending $100,000 on a Porsche, he would take $100,000 and he was buying physical storage units, like the kind where you put your old
Right.
furniture in, and he would have that, and then the renters of those storage units paid for his Porsche. Well, you fast forward 30 years and this day and age of technology, what are we doing here, Catherine? What are
Yeah,
we doing?
it is quite amazing. And I personally believe that the income that we're going to create from this is going to really elevate, something different besides stocks. I mean, a lot of people get into 401ks and they get into stocks, and you're happy if you make 6% a year. I believe that we're going to elevate that to a different level. I don't have a number for you, but I know what is out there in the data centers. I know what they're creating. I've had several friends that have called me or like, oh my gosh, I have friends in Virginia, Washington D.C., and all those things. They're like, they just created another data center. What are you doing now? Because they're building more data centers everywhere you turn. they're building data centers. And what I tell people is, why are we, as just a normal mom, wife, just a normal person, why am I allowing Amazon and Google and Facebook and all these companies, AWS, to get all of that money? If we just had just a tiny piece of that, it could definitely make us wealthy.
Now, everything is dependent. The income that we get is dependent on data being stored on our units, right?
Absolutely.
Now, what's cool though is because I had a guy, I'm actually interviewing him in a couple days, and I'll have that live later. This guy is actually a manager for a massive utility company of data centers. Like that's what his job is.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him this question because I had talked to him, and he actually has already bought units himself. But I asked him that specific question. I said, "Do you believe there's enough data out there to fill all these centers?" Because I've mentioned this on multiple podcasts now that the church I go to, that entire 3 mile strip used to be cornfields. It's now loaded with data centers.
Right.
Like there's billions and billions of dollars on this 3 mile stretch. It's on the news. I see it on TV. And I literally live right up the street from it. And he laughed. He said they can't keep up with building them fast enough for the demand of the because of the release of AI. And all these companies have to have their data stored. It's like they used to store this information on paper, and you had metal filing cabinets that then people rented storage units to put those metal filing cabinets in. He says that companies, which you just mentioned, Amazon and stuff like that, they can't keep up with it enough that when their centers are actually getting full, they are actually going to other companies that already have active units, data center units that are not full, and pushing data onto their servers themselves. I mean, could you imagine hypothetically if you found out that Amazon was pushing their data onto your server? I mean, I'm not saying that's
Right.
happening, but or will happen, but I'm just saying that's where we're at. I mean, and we're not financial advisors. None of this is financial advice. We're just throwing out and having a conversation about what we're doing. Catherine, how excited are you about this?
Well, I'm excited. And I want people to know, because, we talk about data and people out there are just like, I don't really know what that means. But how many of y'all have one of these? It's a phone. There is so much data on this phone that stays up in the cloud. That's basically what we're doing. We are being the servers for that, and somebody's got to pay for it. So it's very interesting that we are, I believe, right before this is about to start to blow up. And the great thing about this is it's decentralized, therefore nobody can control what goes on it. So, I mean, they're going to control what goes on it, but they're not going to decide. I know that a couple of weeks ago I was sending out a link on a certain platform, and every time I sent the link out, they were shutting it down. And I was sending out the link and trying to get people to join this meeting, and the company just kept shutting it down. We're not going to be able to do that because it's decentralized. So I am excited for this. I think everybody in some form or fashion, whether it's fractional ownership or lease to own or buying it outright, should jump into this opportunity.